Hello, hello. Welcome to Mio on MMA podcast. It's been a little bit. I didn't do a prediction video for this card or podcast for this card. And that was because basically I just had a really busy week. Didn't have a chance to really examine the fights all that closely. And then when I recorded it, it was like over in 10 minutes. And it's like, well, that's not very interesting. And there's only one fight that I got particularly deep on. So let's not post it. And that was the logic at hand. So I'm here to do the recap of the UFC Morales versus Burns card. It was just to recap my picks. I picked Michael Morales. He did win. I picked Sadiq Youssef. He did not win. I picked Nursultan Ruziboev. He did win. I picked Melchior Costa. He did win. I picked Gabe Green. He did win, although not for the reasons I thought. I picked Thiago Moises. He did not win. So take loss number 2. I picked Yadir Duval just because I'm not picking Connor Matthews like ever, and he did win. I did pick Tainara Lisboa. That was a mistake. So 5-3. I picked Denise Gomes. I picked Piece of Mind Park, and I picked Tisha Pennington. Although I think there's an argument that Pennington did not win her fight. So, anyways, ended up the day 8-3, and that's a pretty good showing, but one that I don't have any proof of because I didn't post the video. But let's get into the actual fights here. Main event, Gilbert Burns versus Michael Morales. Michael Morales is the guy I picked because really just physical terms. The man is a monster. He has, I think in my video when I was doing the predictions that didn't get uploaded, I said GSP level upside. I don't think it's quite that case because I think GSP is a one of a kind. I don't think anyone has GSP upside. But it is like Kamaru Usman upside, with knees that will last longer. Because he's particularly young, he is a guy who seems to handle the chaos and the elements of striking perfectly fine. So he doesn't have some of the nervousness, some of the nerves, some of the bad reactions that a lot of wrestlers have when they're picking up striking. Josh Koscheck is a great example of this. And he seems to pick up techniques relatively easily. That being said, he's still very raw, still very reliant on the fact that he is an amazing athlete who happens to have really long reach. Like for a welterweight, he has a 79-inch reach, which is insane. And he has a really good jab. Not a lot follows it up a little bit, though. He's kind of a one-handed fighter. And I was like, okay, he's going to get this done because Gilbert Burns is a little bit old at this point, and I don't really trust Burns to be able to beat a guy who has the physicality to just resist his pressure. And that was basically the case here. Morales was able to hit Burns from far further away than Burns was able to hit him. He was able to hurt him. He was able to sting him. He was able to not really worry about the chaos of the takedowns and get the job done with a first-round stoppage. So congratulations to Michael Morales. He's now in title contention. He's one of the best prospects still in the division because he's in title contention while being just 25 years old. That being said, are there problems? Are there concerns? Absolutely. His striking game is still very rough, very clunky, I guess is the word I would use to describe it. And he has a phenomenal wrestling game without necessarily being a great grappler. But at welterweight, that's enough to go pretty damn far. I mean, we did just have a champion in Bilal Muhammad who was a kind of subpar athlete for the elite of the UFC and was able to get there through really just kind of learning things and developing things relatively late in his career. So if Michael Morales can keep learning, keep being a little bit better each time out, keep having a slightly new wrinkle next time out, he is going to be very good. Exceptionally good. One of the all-time greats good. He's not there yet, but there's nothing stopping him from getting there. I do, to a certain degree, believe he needs to change gyms at some point. I just don't really trust... I think he's with Interim, right? Michael Morales, if you could please kindly display yourself here on the Tapology. I would very much appreciate being able to have a look at your gym association. There's Melky Costa. I was on the rankings for the featherweight division, so I was looking for somebody who was on this card, and there it is. Michael Morales, Interim Gym? Yeah, Interim Gym, which is the one, probably the number 2 gym in Mexico, although I think probably the number 1 because I think Lobo has like a chronic failure on its hands. But they've got him. They got Daniel Barres, Marcelo Rojo back in the day comes out of there. I think I'm pretty sure Brandon Moreno was also attached to a gym for the longest time. Henry Briones, Polo Torres. Like there's a lot of like fairly notable Mexican and generally Latin American fighters coming out of there that hit the UFC. Edgar Chairez. Oh, hey, Silvana Gomez Juarez is not actually retired. I kind of thought she retired after the UFC run didn't work out. But yeah, no, I'm seeing that she did end up fighting Alejandro Lara. Lost that fight. She's not bad. And had a boxing match as well. She's going to fight Nadia Vera, who is 5-3 and doesn't really ring a bell. So, anyways, I don't know. Silvana Gomez Juarez was just someone I was surprised the UFC gave up on as fast as they did when they're having way less promising fighters be in their 115 ranks. All right. So, next for Michael Morales. He's in title contention. I would be doing Buckley versus Gary, so that kind of leaves him with like a fight with Sean Brady. That is my opinion, but Brady would also probably not want to take that fight because it's probably a little bit low, high risk, low reward for him, if we're being completely honest. In the co-main event, because the Paul Craig versus Rodolfo Bellato fight got canceled, Sadiq Youssef fought Myron Santos. This fight had a really lack of appeal to me because you have two guys who are both talking about going up to 155 and are fighting at 155, but they're fighting against other 145ers who are coming up. And that means that like no real questions were going to get answered except for negative ones. Like Sadiq Youssef, I do think is, and it pains me to say this because he is a super nice dude on Twitter and he actually interacts with fans on like an even level, like in a way that is like more than like John Jones daring people to call him an idiot. But, yeah, I do think he's kind of a bit washed. It's not necessarily an age thing because he's certainly not young. He's 31 years old, which, you know, theoretically you should have 4 to 5 more years of like relatively competitive time in him. But there has just not been a lot of good stuff in all of his recent fights. And this one wasn't really an exception. He got outlanded by Myron Santos in a really slow-paced fight. Like, he had a pretty decent first round that I thought he did win. A lot of people didn't score for him, but it was like, he outlanded Santos like 2-1 in that round, and he had some pressure along the fence. Not that really scores anything, but like, you know, I don't know what Santos won on, I guess. And then I had Santos winning the second and the third round because he just outlanded him, and despite being not particularly high-paced, was able to outwork him. So Youssef has lost 3 in a row, getting knocked up by Diego Lopez, and that loss to Edson Barboza also coming up. And it's been a while since he's had a meaningful win, because before that he beat Don Shainis, who's not in the UFC anymore, to my knowledge, and Alex Caceres, who is, well, he's Alex Caceres, and then the loss to Arnold Allen. And you're back at like 2021 at that point, so maybe it's just a lot of injuries or whatever, but he's been like not very active and losing. So this was just kind of a bad example of what happens when he fights, because Myron Santos, it's not that Myron Santos is bad. He's very, very good at some things. He's a very sharp counterpuncher. He has good power and good like striking fundamentals and fights off wrestling reasonably well. But the fight with Francis Marshall, I think, really described that if you could bring the fight to Santos, I don't think he really has a great answer other than to really hurt you with a single shot. And Youssef could not, for 3 rounds, convince himself to do that a lot. And I think if you can't do that, then your chances of winning fights at lightweight or at featherweight are very, very limited. And particularly at lightweight, because they're going to be bigger dudes who you can't really bully around with your relatively lackadaisical style. Like it's the problem when you're going up and you have like a power and strength based game, which Youssef kind of does. It's really hard to see how that works. And Santos is kind of in the same boat where like he's 5'7", and I don't really know if that's going to work out for him. And that's why I wanted to see both of these guys fight like a real lightweight to find answers to that. And we didn't get that here. Nursultan Ruzibolev versus Justin Solfus was probably better than I honestly expected it to be. Stolfus is at a major height disadvantage. Actually, surprisingly enough, just a 1-inch reach disadvantage, but there's a 5-inch difference in height. And at the end of the day, he got worked over here at some times at range, but he also had his moments getting inside. And I scored the first 2 rounds for Ruziboev, the third round for Stolfus. A lot of people gave the first round to Stolfus, and I get why there was that knockdown, and I'm using air quotes when I say that, in the first round. But it was really just a clash of heads, so that didn't really work out. Ruziboev got the takedown, he outlanded him, he outworked him 2-1, did his job. Second round was kind of much the same. Although without the takedown part, Stolfus actually got the takedown, but he got reversed because he went for a guillotine choke / Darce choke. I can't remember which. Something to do with a front headlock, and he got reversed. And then the third round I thought was very, very close. And at the end of the day, I gave it to Stolfus for the takedown and the control because the damage was quite equal. The effective striking was quite equal. The effective grappling and the control favored Stolfus. So it was a better fight than I expected because, honestly, I have low expectations every time Stolfus fights. He's just not a UFC caliber fighter, in my opinion. But at the same time, he is overachieved like a bucket load. He beat Joe Pyfer on the Contender Series to get in, granted by injury and not really one that he enforced. But he has beaten Dwight Grant, Punahele Soriano, and Marc-Andre Barrio. And particularly the Barrio one was shocking, stunning. And that's better than I expected him to do. And his losses are nothing to be ashamed of. Ruziboev is huge, and as much as he's not a deep fighter in any way, he is pretty well-rounded. Bruno Ferreira is an amazing physical presence, even if he's not a particularly good fighter. And then you're back at a Boost Magomedov being very, very dangerous in the first round, which is where he caught him. And then Gerald Meerschaert, Rodolfo Vieira, Kyle Daukaus. I don't think any of those 3 require any explanation. But it is a bit weird that Stolfus lost his first 3 fights in the UFC to Daukaus, Vieira, and Meerschaert. And don't get me wrong, those are all very good wins, and somehow stuck around. It's I'm confused as to what he's got on somebody at the UFC to keep him in a job, but maybe it's just that he really just does say yes to any opponent, because if you look at what Ruziboev has faced, it's so much worse. Ruziboev, it's okay, Bruno Ferreira, okay, both of them fought Bruno Ferreira, cool, fine. But then it's Dumas and Eric McConaughey, who probably do not belong in the UFC. McConaughey and they both have the potential to belong in the UFC, but they have undercooked games in a huge way. And then of course losing to Joaquin Buckley, which that is what it is. So Ruziboev gets the win there, and we'll continue on. Melchior Costa versus Julian Erosa. I am off my game today. I'm sorry. I'm also coughing a little bit, and I have a little itch in my throat. That's the reason I'm not going to bother editing that out, is I think it's going to take a while, because I'm probably going to have little staggered coughs throughout. But it is what it is. I had Costa winning all 3 rounds here, although the third round is very, very questionable. They had a similar level of activity. And it was interesting to see Erosa get some takedowns, but Costa was able to take him down, was able to sting him on the back foot quite heavily when Erosa was pressuring. So it was Costa letting Erosa have the type of fight that he likes to have, but making him pay for it at any time. And I thought that was a very, very good performance, because we don't see that a lot. Generally speaking, without finishing Erosa, you don't win that kind of fight. So credit to Melchior Costa for doing that, for showing off just a really, really high active, willing to throw a lot, willing to throw a lot of the back foot, willing to counter with force. And I thought he did an amazing job. So, yeah. Then there was Gabe Green versus Camilo. Camilo was looking pretty good and probably won the first round. He was getting the better of the striking when the exchanges actually kicked off, although he was getting pressured to the fence a lot. And he was able to obviously get the fight to the ground and, try for that triangle choke from mount position. And that did not work out. Number 1, he didn't get the submission. Number 2, it appeared to gas out his legs, and he just kind of gave up his back after that and got choked by Gabe Green. So congratulations, Gabe Green, on the debut at 155. I don't necessarily think it fixes any of his problems, but he does look quite large in the division. He is one of those guys I think kind of fits between divisions a little bit, like a 165 fighter, basically. It looks like he's cutting probably too much weight to make 155, but he was also too small at welterweight. So, I don't know, maybe it'll work. Maybe he can make the weight and it's not really a problem. But this was a good win for him and a good debut. And then Thiago Moises got knocked out by Jared Gordon. Gordon took him down, actually got worked a little bit from bottom. There was some elbows. He cut up Gordon pretty good. I didn't actually see where the cut was, but he was definitely bleeding onto Moises while they were on the ground from those elbows. And there was a threat of an armbar as well. Not a serious one. You're not going to really isolate the arm of Gordon on the bottom like the way Moises was trying to do. But hey, it's something. It's something to make him think about it. And Gordon didn't really get much done from top position. But then they go to the feet. Moises starts, working some of those calf kicks. He's very, very good at calf kicks. And then he throws I think it was a right hook. And then, or it was left hook. He got cross-countered basically of throwing a hook with a straight. And got put down and put out. So, big one from Jared Gordon, who doesn't usually show up power like that too much. He's not a big KO artist, but he just picked up maybe the biggest win of his UFC career, honestly. Like, what's bigger that Jared Gordon's done here? His other wins are over Mark Madsen. I guess that's kind of big. Leandro Santos, Joe Selecki, Danny Chavez, Chris Fishgold, Dan Morit, Hacker and Diaz. Hacker and Diaz maybe is a bit bigger. That was kind of the one that put him on the map, I think. And then Michael Quinones. But no, I'd say, at the very least, this is one of his biggest wins in the division and the most relevant one right this second. Because we've kind of given up on, Diaz, I think, is retired. And then we've more or less given up on the idea of Mark Madsen being a serious contender. And then, of course, he should have beaten Paddy Pimblett, but we'll not get into that. We'll ignore that. And to be honest, it was a fight that I didn't leave feeling better about Gordon on. It was a fight I left feeling worse about Paddy Pimblett on. But he gets the job done here. Big win. Go Zombie Squad. Excuse me. Die. Gets the job done. Yadier Molina, rear naked choke, Connor Matthews. It means nothing. Connor Matthews is a bad athlete who tried to develop a standard athletic style and somehow got to the UFC. Don't know how. And he's just going to lose every single fight while he's here. Seriously, I don't know why we're bothering keeping him around. He's been dominated by, maybe not dominated. He has somewhat competitive fight with Dennis Bazookia, but being dominated by Jose Delgado and now by Yadier Duval. And I do not know that either of them are good. They might be good. There's nothing about Duval that screams he's terrible to me, but there's nothing that screams he's good either. And Connor Matthews can't stand up to that. Taira Lisboa versus Luna Santos. Lisboa won on the feet. Santos won on the ground. Santos eventually gets her down in the second round, starts working a scarf hold, and secures an Americana for a submission or a key lock, whatever you want to call it, and busts her up with 1 second left on the clock. I don't really know what to say about the fight because I thought at the end of the day, I was just let down by Lisboa because I thought she would. And I don't know why I thought this, because looking back at her other fights, it's not been the case that she's actually been hard to take down. But I thought that there would be some kind of takedown defense in her game. But then I remembered she got taken down 2 out of 3 times by Ravenna Oliveira. She got taken down 1 out of, maybe it was Jessica Rose Clark where she stuffed 6 takedowns, maybe. I don't know. But, it's disappointing because, I don't really think Luana Santos is that good. Don't get me wrong, she's not bad. She's got a solid judo background. She's got some cool stuff. She works from the clinch. She's at 135 and not killing herself to make 125 anymore. These are all good things. These are all solid. But I'm just not really excited. Whereas with Lisboa, it was this could be fun. This could be a really low-rent Manon Fiorot, Valentina Shevchenko type fighter. And I guess we're not even going to get that. So that's a little bit of a letdown when it comes down to it. And that's kind of all I really have to say about that one. Denise Gomez just blitzed Elise Reed. I'm having a conversation on Twitter with someone about whether Elise Reed is actually any good. And we're basically trying to come up with who the worst. The suggestion was, what if we did Elise Ardeline versus Elise Reed? Loser is the worst fighter in the UFC. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of like what happens when somebody with no physicality but an idea of a game in Reed beats up with someone who has actually okay physicality and no idea what they're doing, and that's Ardeline. So, and they're like, what is Reed good at? Getting punched in the face? And I'm like, She has ideas about what to do at range. She has a kickbox, like a range kick, very specifically a range kickboxing game, but she's too slow, too unimpactful to actually make it work. Like, it's not actually all that different to like Shanna Bannon's problem, where it's like you kind of have ideas that could be worked around here, but there is no physicality backing them up like at all, and you're just gonna get smoked. And that's what happened here. Elise Reed's fights have been... There's a reason, and they showed it on screen. They're like 3-3 as an underdog in fights. Well, there's a reason you've been an underdog 7 times in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 fights, 7 times the underdog. And it's you don't have the tools. And the wins are over Jinyu Fry, Jessica Penne, who's very much done, Melissa Martinez, who has like similar problems, and then Corey McKenna, Corey McKenna needs to learn to do what her body actually is capable of doing, which is not trying to be a boxer with a sub 60-inch reach. In a nutshell, that's what it comes down to. But yeah, her loss to Sam Hughes, like she got stopped by Sam Hughes, got stopped by Sarge Eubanks. That's not a problem. But like also Luma Lubume, Lupi Godinez, now Denise Gomes. Like it shows up that then whenever she goes up against someone who is actually noted as a UFC level athlete, and not even that in the case of Hughes, she loses. And that was not an exception here. Peace of Mind Park versus Carlos Hernandez, Hugh Sung Park. Park looks actually pretty good. I wasn't sold on Park after the road to the UFC or the knockout of Shannon Ross, because Shannon Ross is bad. He has a terrible, terrible chin. Like, it is just not good. And then the road to UFC level competition just tends to be relatively low. But he went out there with Carlos Hernandez, who is a guy who lasted over a round with Tetsuya Taira on the ground, lasted 3 minutes and 16 seconds with Alan Nascimento, who's an incredibly good grappler, and also went to decision with Ray Saruya, who is a pretty promising grappler as well. And it's like, okay, you're not beating any of these guys, obviously. Like, you're not beating anything above Daniel Barres, Victor Altamirano, Dennis Bondar. These are guys that don't really belong in the division. And then you've got, oh God, here we go. We're trying to, Naim Jargal Tumendembarel. There you go. Who is a UFC level athlete, very much so, but is a incredibly raw fighter, incredibly unformed fighter. And those are the guys you're getting wins against. Anybody, I'm going to pick anybody who has like a really a good future and like a constructed game against you. But it is impressive that Park took him apart as easily as he did. So maybe we got something here in Park. Maybe we got something. Maybe we have a flyweight Korean fighter climbing the ranks here and actually getting things done. And then there was Liana Pinheiro versus Tisha Pennington. The issue with a Pennington fight is always there's like no threat of a finish. And I get that. Like I'm a big fan. I really enjoy her, but like there is a very samey feel to all of her fights because she's going to approach it in roughly the same manner and without any real chance of finishing. So I get why people find them bored. She just outworked Pinheiro in all but the second round. And I gave her the first and the third round pretty easily. And the second round, you could go either way. It's pretty close, and Pinheiro theoretically hits harder, so you could say similar levels of volume, work rate, etc. You have to give it to the bigger hitter. Maybe. But I actually thought Pennington actually was the one who hurt Pinheiro a little bit in this fight. Which I know is shocking because she's known as notoriously pillow-fisted. But there were a couple of times in, like, I would say, I think it was the second and third round. Let me consult my notes here for a second here. Yeah, second and third round where, like, I think she actually hurt Pinheiro reasonably well. There was also, like, kind of a cool hook kick to back fist combo in the third round, which was nice. I love it when she gets creative. But, did this, like, make me think Pennington has anything higher than the ceiling I already think she has? No, not at all. I do have to ask, though, this is the only ranked fight they had on the card, aside from the main event. Why was this the opener? Like, I understand that there's not a lot of hype for Pennington or Pinheiro at this point. I get that. Pennington is very much topped out as a sort of gatekeeper to the rankings type of fighter, and Pinheiro hasn't really made the strides we were hoping that she would in terms of as a striker or anything. She still looks very clunky on the feet, and she doesn't really initiate her takedown game or utilize her judo in an offensive way in any way. Like, it's very defensive. So, there's a flaw there, and she's 31 years old, so she's kind of like a finished product. I understand that. I get that. I'm not saying that this was a fight I was really looking forward to. But look at this card. Your co-main event was Sadiq Youssef versus Myron Santos. Your main card had Dustin Stolfus and Nursultan Ruziboev on it. It had Melchior Costa, Julian Erosa, and it had Gabe Green versus Matheus Camilo. Granted, that wasn't supposed to be on the main card, but still, why was this not on the main card? Like, you're supposed to be trying to make me care about your rankings. You have to. Like, otherwise they don't serve a purpose. The UFC undermines itself constantly all the time. It's another one like Mick Maynard talking about, like, he's the matchmaker for the UFC. I forget what portion he handles, but same with John Shelby. And it's like, he literally undercuts his own, like, art. He's like, what are the... He's like, it's the no-name fight cards that actually produce the bangers, guys. It's like, so you're telling me you just, like, smash fighters together, and if it's a banger, it's a banger, and if it's not a banger, you're saying there's no art form to what you're doing. There's nothing here, so why do you get paid? It's very lazy. It's very lazy. It's very lazy and very basic flawed. You have a ranking system that I'm supposed to care about that has to be in some way enforced through how you construct cards. And this fight wasn't amazing. This fight wasn't awesome. It was probably a little bit better than I expected it to be. But you still got to put it on the main card. Anyways, that was the UFC Apex card. Burns versus Morales. And we move on to the next one, I guess, in a nutshell. And is it making me happy? I guess that's the question. Because it's that Blanchfield versus... Blanchfield versus Barber, which I'm really cheering for Aaron Blanchfield, and I just don't think Macy Barber is actually going to be ever all that good. I think she's too much of a physical bully. But we'll get more into that when we get to that. And it's another UFC card, Apex, but it actually looks a little bit better because you've got Gamrot versus Ludovic Klein. You've got Soo Kyung Ko versus Billy Ray Goff. That's a meaningless fight, but at least it should be fun. And then you've got Dustin Jacoby versus Bruno Lopez. That has a little bit of meaning to it. Zach Reese versus Dusko Todorovic. I'm very meh on both those guys. And then further on down, we have Alan Nascimento versus Jeff Alfio. That's going to be fun. That's going to be grappling fun. Let's go. Let's go. Someone whose only path to victory is grappling with Alan Nascimento. Let's go. I'm going to enjoy that. Why is that not on the main card? Andreas Gustafsson versus Jeremiah Wells. That's fine. Ketlin Vieira versus BC Chiazon. That's a ranked fight that should be higher up. Again, if you don't care about your rankings, why should anyone else? And then Oban Elliott versus Ramesh Brahima. Why do I feel like that fight already happened? Am I crazy? It didn't happen. What am I confusing that for? Basil Hafez versus Oban Elliott. I'm confusing that for the fight. My apologies. Racial insensitivity towards the Muslim fighters. And then you have Jordan Levitt versus Kurt Hallbaugh. That's fine. Markel Medeiros versus Balaji and Ryan Dos Santos versus Alice Ardeline. That's what kicked off the whole talk about Ardeline versus Reed. Was talking about that fight and Santos being a ridiculous favorite in it. Which the thing is like, I get it. I get it. Ardeline is really bad. But at the same time, we have seen Dos Santos lose. Admittedly, I think in controversial circumstances, because I'm pretty sure I had her winning the fight. But she does, on paper, have a loss to Pusha Tomar. How'd that fight go? Yeah, I remember this fight. I had Dos Santos winning the second and the third round. Like Tomar had a good first round, but that was like really about it. Anyways, there we go. Next fight card actually does look a little bit better. I'll be posting up some fights over on the Discord server today. Check them out. Enjoy them. Check out the social media links down below. And I'll join you. I'll see you guys in a couple of days with predictions for that card.